Well, hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Note the Past. Today, we're going to change pace a little bit. I've got five guests that are going to join me to talk about poster art, which is a topic that the five of us have kicked around now for several months. And I think you're going to be very interested in the experience and the examples of wonderful poster art that these gentlemen have collected over the years. You know, we lived in an extremely important and interesting time during the late 60s. I was in high school, as were many of my compadres here at the time, going into college and just experiencing the counterculture in San Francisco, the proliferation of new music, and really the societal changes going from conformity of the 50s to experimentation in that period of time was just an amazing time. As I thought about the music, I thought that a couple of examples couldn't have said it any better. In the 50s, you had Pat Boone doing Love Letters in the Sand. And during the counterculture in the late 60s, we have Jimi Hendrix doing Are You Experienced? So if anything was to describe that change in music, and music, as we know, is really a bellwether for what's happening in society and our culture. And we're going to talk a lot about that today with the examples of this wonderful poster art that these gentlemen have collected over the years. I'm going to introduce them quickly. You see Rob Biltman, if you can raise your hand, Rob. Known Rob for quite a bit of time, connected recently. He's an incredible photographer with a highly successful career. He and I did the podcast on the Unseen Peninsula a couple of months ago. Check it out if you haven't already. Mike Hadelot right next to him. Mike, if you could raise your hand so people know who you are. Mike and I have known each other since late 80s, beginning of the 90s. And as I've said before, he and I have probably talked more about rock and roll, read more about rock and roll, listened more to rock and roll, probably more than anyone I know outside my wife, Cindy. Bottom right here, if we're going in that order, is Matt McWright. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Hey, Chris.
Matt and I began our relationship a couple of months ago, town of Atherton, and have found that we have a lot in common. This is one of the things that we have in common, and I think you're going to be excited to see his collection. And then last but not least, we have Rodney Paul and Russ Porchetta. Hey, guys. Was able to see their poster art show about a year or so ago, and we're going to have them talk a little bit about its genesis, its development, and perhaps maybe where you can see their next live show. So without any further ado, let's jump right into the deck here. And I think we've got it.
Yay.
Hey. So the first slide that we have here, you all remember Sherman and Mr. Peabody, don't you? Well, this one is Sherman asking, where are we going today, Mr. Peabody? And Sherman answers, Mr. Peabody answers, actually, Sherman, we're going back to the 60s when people had compassion and heart, and there were no cell phone or computers, just wicked music. I thought that was a good way for us to start today. And I'm going to jump right in here to Rodney and Russ. So if you guys want to take it away and talk about your show.
Sure. Maybe I'll go first, Russ. I'm Rodney Paul. I'm a Haight-Ashbury tour guide. I've been doing that for about 10 years. And I created a set of Summer of Love music programs, kind of diving into some of the great musical things going on back then that I present at local libraries. And Russ came to me and said, we should be doing one on the poster art. And we'll show you some of the posters and some of the things that resulted from that. And Russ?
Well, yeah, that's true. And this is one of the ones that we started with. So I grew up in Redwood City, graduated from high school in 67. So I was and I've loved music since I was a kid. I went to the University of San Francisco, just a stone's throw away from the Haight. Didn't hang out in the Haight a whole lot, but used to go to a bar on the corner of Haight and Stanion called the Blarney Castle. And we were 18, looked like we were 15, but I always got served there. So most of our time on Haight Street got to spend in that little bar. But my son is also a poster artist. So when Rodney and I started to put this thing together, my son Chris said, you got to concentrate on the big five. And that's what we've done. Alton Kelly, Stanley Mouse, Victor Moscoso, Wes Wilson, and Rick Griffin. And he said, focus on those guys. And so we started to do that. And we went back to the real beginnings. And here's one of the first ones, the real first one as far as the San Francisco. We're not going to go into the seed, but this is the first one that Alton Kelly did for one of the early shows. And this one was called a Tribute to Dr. Strange. And as we talk about in our show, Alton wasn't the greatest of artists, but his work improved significantly when he made partners with Stanley Mouse.
And this is from 1965, right, Russ?
Yeah. Or no, early 66. So these guys had come out of the experience up in Nevada City with the Charlatans and the other bands that were playing up there, and they wanted to kind of replicate the situation that was going on in Virginia City out in San Francisco. And so they knew the guys that were in the bands, and they decided that they wanted to dance like they did. Although San Francisco had some restrictions saying that kids couldn't dance unless they were over 18, unless they had their parents. So there was some kind of crazy cock and bull restrictions, but they went ahead and did it anyway.
Here's a great poster. How about this one?
Well, this one is one of the really coolest ones, and it's another one of the Alton Kelly, Stanley Mouse collaborations. And the story that we tell on this one is that they were really worried about this poster because, number one, they were afraid that Zigzag would sue them for not counterfeiting, but copyright
appropriation. Yeah,
copyright infringement, and then also that they would alert the cops to their drug smoking. So, but it was really one of the popular ones. And I'll just do this one real quick, Rodney, because that's the shirt I'm wearing today. And this is the show that I saw at Fillmore West. And it was the last set of performances with Janis Joplin and in Big Brother. They would in San Francisco. They would continue to perform for a while as Big Brother and the Holding Company, but not in San Francisco. But a great bill. Big Brother and the Holding Company, Santana, and then Chicago Transit Authority, before the city of Chicago said you can't use Transit Authority in your name. This show was all of $3.
Wow. That is just incredible.
And you got a free apple when you walked into the Fillmore.
Yeah. So at this point, while I'm reshuffling the deck here, how long have you guys been doing this show?
We started it during the pandemic. I think it might have been 2021. My Summer of Love music programs were designed to be presented in person at libraries. But during the pandemic, we realized since the images were all in PowerPoint, it was very easy to do over Zoom. And we would get attendance of 100 or even 200 people. So Russ, he and I created this during the pandemic.
Yeah, I think our first pandemic show was like October or November of 2020.
Oh, still back then.
Yeah.
And then since then we've done it at some local libraries, and we love going to libraries and doing this thing for people. We just did it in Atherton, which is just a fantastic library.
And that was through Chris, and Matt, you were there too. So that was a cool thing, but that was a great experience. We're trying to get some other things going. We've got something with, I think, that place called the Reddas in Menlo Park, but I haven't heard back from him. And we've got some out in San Ramon area.
What we do is we show the posters and talk about them, but we also play some music clips, So we're kind of giving people a sense of what you would have seen if you'd gone to some of these shows.
It's a great show, and I really encourage you to check it out. Hey guys, how about this one?
Well, this is really considered the first psychedelic poster. This was done by Wes Wilson, and his thing was there were a couple of different things, but these things was making letters just part of the scene and created them so that they look like they moved. And that was Wes Wilson's great when the printer showed him what it looked like. He said, it looks like the letters are moving. And Wes says, print it. And so I think the coolest thing that I like about this, besides the look of it, is that the association. So this is like 1966, summer of 1966. And the association had their hit, Along Comes Mary. And then, but all their other songs were all cheesy songs, and I can't, I just imagine them kind of being almost laughed off the bill at the Fillmore when they were playing this particular gig.
Totally.
We have video of Wes Wilson talking about this poster. So that's one of the things that we get some of these artists actually talking about their experience with it.
Yeah, this is a great one. And this one?
Well, this is the one that I just was talking about. The Big Brother show at the Fillmore West. I had a hot date that night, and it was a great show, a great show. One of the best nights when I saw in my Fillmore experiences.
Oh, that's cool. All right.
This shows the logo of the family dog. You want to talk about that, Russ?
No, you can go ahead.
I mean, because we often talk about Bill Graham, but the family dog was putting on shows at, this is the Avalon Ballroom, and Chet Helms was running it. He was also the manager of Big Brother and the holding company, and they kind of became the house band at the Avalon Ballroom. But what a great poster this is. And
this is a Victor Moscoso, family dog number 38 from the 1966 show. And Victor was really the most far out of all the artists. I think some of them are really, really hard to look at, and that's what he took pride in. And he said, people need to really involve themselves in these posters and really look at them. And his thing was that the musicians were blowing out our eardrums, and I'm gonna blow out their eyeballs.
This one really does.
And here's another cool one.
Yeah, this was an unusual one too. It was a combination of Rick Griffin and Victor Moscoso, and it's for a 2-week gig. It was kind of like almost like a San Francisco Woodstock type of thing. And you look at this bill, it's 2 weeks worth of shows, and the bill is just incredible. It's got the Who there, and then Grateful Dead. And there's just Quicksilver's on it. I can't even read all these things on it now, but it was just an unusual poster and a very, very unusual Bill Graham concept. So I love this poster because it really evokes Art Nouveau, which was a popular style in France in like turn of the 20th century, and just what a great visual experience looking at this thing.
Yeah,
can I ask a question about this poster? And I'm embarrassed to ask it because it's literally on my wall in front of me. But do we know what bloom meant at the top of the poster?
It was distinct from boom with the nuclear cloud going up. It was a positive spin on nuclear annihilation.
Wow.
Terrific.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
So blowing your mind instead of blowing up society.
Bloom in your mind.
A little bit of the eve of destruction, huh?
Yeah, and then this one is one that my wife took of me. She and I went up to the Museum of Modern Art, and it's in front of all the posters. Rodney went with his buddy Peter Albin, the bassist from Big Brother and the Holding Company. Do we have a picture of that too? Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, I went with Peter. It was actually the day after his 80th birthday. And it's so cool to be in this show with him with so many posters in which Big Brother played. And then the curator for SF MoMA found out he was in the gallery and came down and talked to us. And Peter has a lot of these posters. He's got a lot of the great Big Brother posters, including that one with the zigzag man that we showed earlier. So it's kind of fun to be looking at these things with him.
Yeah, we've done a couple of shows with Peter, and he's really a cool guy, and he's just so laid back. But he loves talking a little bit. He's not boastful at all. And Rodney just did a show with Peter and Dave Getz, the drummer from Big Brother at Haight Street. It's on Page, but the library in the Haight, and it was a question and answer thing, and it was really a cool thing. So it's nice when we were able to get Peter to join us in one of our shows.
Yeah, we should probably say if anyone out there, you've got a connection to a library and you'd like to see either me and Russ come and do the poster program, or we could probably do a Big Brother program and get Peter Albin to come. Let me know. Get in touch, and let's see if we can arrange something.
Oh, this is great, guys. And the show is dynamite, as Matt mentioned. And if any of you listening, you want to get a hold of Russ and Rodney, don't hesitate to drop me a line and I'll be sure to pass it on to her. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you. It's great to be part of this.
And now, Mr. Bilterman. Rob, take it away.
Well, where to start after that fabulous presentation? The one question, Russ, I have for you while you're still here, you are any of your presentations shows on YouTube, or are they publicly accessible in any way for the audience?
They are not, but it's something that the video, it's something that we could look into.
Yeah. I think you'd have a hell of an audience, frankly.
Yeah, I think that would be something that we could talk about. Yeah,
great.
That's a great. Yeah, thank you.
That's a great idea, Rob.
All right, so handbills. I'm the small fry in this group. All you guys with your big, beautiful posters, which I always aspired to, but I was stuck in low gear. I started off in 7th grade in my hometown of Woodside, and I just fell in love with these handbills. They were a collection of everything I admired: rock and roll, the new scene in San Francisco, and I was born later than I think you gentlemen were. I was born in '54, so I was underage but had big dreams, and ended up trading my beloved skateboard that I lived on for a collection of about 80 handbills. And I was so thrilled. My parents thought I'd lost my mind because they knew how much I loved that skateboard, but I loved the handbills even more. So I started collecting them. Let's go ahead and get into it here. This is not, I do not have this original, but I did get a high resolution copy of it from the early days. I believe this is from '65. You've got Big Brother, Fleetwood Mac, $1 silver is the price tag. And this was at a time when, plans change. You don't go back to press for the poster. You just go down there to June 21st and you cross it out and you write the 20th. And you cross out the dates and days and you run with it. So this was the beginning of what became a great American story.
Oh, this is great. And obviously, Rob, this is with Fleetwood Mac here, this is pre Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks.
Pre everything.
Yeah, totally.
Next. Well, this was the sister handbill, which is to say when they shipped these out, they shipped them two side by side. And you can see on the right-hand reverse of this, the crease across the name of Albert King, the great bluesman, and Mike Bloomfield. They would fold these in half. And I would even tell my postman, do not fold these in half. This is this is art, don't do that. Well, he said, I'm not folding them in half. That's how they go through the mail service. So they would come to a side. So this is Jimi Hendrix on the left. On the right was the previous Big Brother poster that Russ is wearing on his shirt. I put the back on here because it's funny. This was so small time at the time. You'll notice there's no year on these. No year on any of them. So I have an assistant who is a data magician, and I gave her my 236 handbills and had her go back through the calendar to match up what days are the 18th, 19th, and 21st. What year do those happen on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday? And she was able to sequence my handbills chronologically. So these are all by date. And she's a bit of a miracle worker. One of my favorites, The Doors, with the alien coming through the window with the tablet on which it says, pay attention. And that's just what we were doing back then, paying attention and finding new ways with which to see, sometimes with a little help from the wonderful world of pharmacology.
And that was from a Denver show, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. What happened was I started with my collection, and I've never lacked for courage when it comes to this kind of thing. I called the office of the Fillmore and Avalon, and I said, I want to be on your email list. Yeah, right. On your poster, your handbill list. And they laughed and said, and this was probably, by this time, it was probably 68. And they said, everybody wants to be on our handbill list. Forget it. So I gave it some thought and decided the best way to go about was to lie about it. And so I called them and I explained to them that I had been on their email list, that I was a journalist, an office journalist for the Chronicle, and that they had taken me off the list. So I wasn't trying to get on the list. I was trying to get replaced on the list. And it worked with both Avalon and Fillmore. And so I started getting these in my mail every week. Hence the large collection.
And I love the pay attention. I hadn't noticed it. It reminds me of John Lennon's lyric in Strawberry Fields, living is easy with eyes closed, misunderstanding all you see. I love that. Thanks for pointing that out, Rob.
It's a keeper. Family Dog, just love this piece. What stands out to me in all these are the times when artists really diverted, Russ's comment about the type that moves. Yes, that was a breakthrough, but just doing things that were fun like this. And what's fun about this is that you can't really see it on a small screen, but all of the copy balloons for the characters, it's gibberish. And I think after a little of the pay attention support, sometimes things showed up, but here captured beautifully.
That's great. That's great.
Procol Harum and Santana. This was another one that I always felt like the goal was to make the poster completely unintelligible. And this is one that was fairly middle of the road when that is concerned, but always fun to try and decipher them.
Yeah, sometimes it does take work, Rob, to your point of trying to figure out who in fact is being included.
Well, I'm sure we're all aware of who resented that aspect of the posters the most. Bill Graham.
Yeah.
Bill Graham couldn't stand the fact that these weren't easily read.
Yeah, and I think it was also part of the counterculture saying, okay, buy a Ford, right? Logo, photograph, happy people. So this is kind of a rejection of that, saying we're going to challenge your artistic sensibility for you to figure out what it says. And we aren't selling stuff. We're selling an experience. And the experience starts with reading the poster.
That's great.
Okay, next piece, one of my all-time favorites for so many reasons. This was 1968 when Cream recorded the live portions of Wheels of Fire. At the time, 1968, so I was 14. Cream was my favorite band of all time. And for my birthday, I convinced my mother and father, Captain and Mrs. Biltman, to take me and a friend to Winterland to see Cream. And my parents, I will give them credit. They loved the arts. I have a sister who's a published author. I have a sister who was a stage actress for 18 years with Les Mis. My late sister Lisa was a senior designer for Carol Little Fashion, and my work in photography. And they loved the arts. So it came time to go to the show, and down the street, wearing what they would wear when they went to the symphony. They were wearing their finest clothes and brought their 14-year-old son and his best friend to Winterland. And people are blowing weed and dancing. And my parents were sitting there in their finest, enjoying the show. And it was a show to be remembered. And then in the months that followed, we learned that they had created the Wheels of Fire album. Was looking at the notes on it. They did the studio work at Atlantic Studio and IBC in London, and then the live recording and Winterland. So anyway, so this is my favorite place.
I'm going to jump in if I can.
Yeah.
Because you talk about your mom and dad going to that show. I saw that show also on Thursday night at the Fillmore. And I was president of the fraternity, and one of the things they did was they shaved our heads. So we went in there looking like, Hare Krishnas in a sense, which is, skin, not quite skinheads, but certainly like Marine haircuts. And so I'm sure that I felt about as comfortable as your mom and dad did a couple of nights later.
That's great.
Great stories.
Hey, can I point something else out about that poster? Because you see it on a lot of these posters. You'll notice that there's 2 venues listed,
Right,
with different dates. And as maybe many of you know, the Fillmore was located a couple of blocks away from Winterland. And based on the night of the week and based on the size of the crowd, Graham anticipated he would schedule the artists to play in the different venues. And my understanding is that they would often, late at night after the Fillmore show, they would wheel equipment literally block to block over to Winterland to get the stage set up for the performances the next night.
That's great.
A great connection.
I think we may have all been at that show together, actually, that last Cream show. Yeah, honestly,
If only we knew.
One of the things I remember, at Winterland, you remember James Cotton doing somersaults on stage, and I think that was Al Cooper's first Blood, Sweat, and Tears tour. Which was,
it was.
They were, they were really original at that. Well, Chicago, and then of course, Al did the New York Blood, Sweat, Tears. But yeah.
Oh, this is fun stuff. Okay, Rob.
Yeah, I have to say, this is great doing this with some scholars like yourselves. I'm a music consumer. My life has been deeply invested in the development of my photographic work. These posters have always been kind of a private thing for me. They're not something I speak about, show, but they really were the inspiration that led to the work that I do today. In fact, I was looking at this, the Art in America, when they wrote about my camera lens and computer-free photographs. This is Thuringian matrix and could easily have been published as a poster at the time. So anyway, getting back to this, who doesn't love Alfred E. Newman? I don't know about you guys, but Mad Magazine was my secret sin. And parents didn't like it, which of course made me want to read it all the more. So here we have Alfred E. Newman. On the right, we have a mushroom symbolizing the other side. On the left, we have thermonuclear destruction. And in the middle, we have Alfred E. Newman. Another one that I traded, I don't remember how, but got it from the show in Denver.
Oh, that's cool.
Proud owner of an original Mad Magazine.
There you go.
Oh, terrific.
No, Alfred E. Newman. He showed up later, but.
Jeez. Okay.
And here we have Janis Joplin and James Brown. This was a show that was the only time I saw Janis Joplin, and it's a favorite and one I've never forgotten. She was one in a million. Lost so many along the way.
Yeah. And what's so interesting about this one, Rob, is at the bottom underneath Janis. I always loved the way the people that did the lighting also were profiled on the handbill. So that Lights by Brotherhood of Lights. I just thought that was a nice touch because they clearly were part of the production and the experience.
Yeah, and we all had our favorite light shows. The team we really loved.
Totally.
Now we're moving to much later dates. I believe this was from 1970, maybe 71. Sorry, I don't have the dates on these, but this is when they started moving into a more technological computer, what we would now call the digital realm. And really loved it. Loved the contrast between the bit mapping in the background and that what appears to be turn of the century Art Deco sultry poet in that, or woman in that hot red color.
Yeah. Very interesting progression in these, Rob. Thanks so much for showing them. Matt, let's move to you.
Terrific. So I thought, since the discussion of the posters, we've had great discussion around the posters, and as Rob highlighted, these posters were translated into handbills. As some of you, as this group no doubt knows, those graphics were also used as the basis for tickets at Bill Graham's venues, the Fillmore and the Fillmore West, and so. These are actually available on the market, and they're actually available in fairly pristine condition. And that's because you would go to the box office on the street level of the auditorium, you'd buy a ticket, you'd walk in, walk up the stairs, and you'd give the ticket right back. So these tickets were barely in the possession of the buyer for any amount of time. And God bless Bill Graham, he hung on to them. Now, I understand that there was also some, let's say, accounting advantages to reusing these tickets again and again, but that's for a different podcast. So I love Bill Graham's life story. I love the role he played in San Francisco history of rock and roll. I know he's a loved figure and a hated figure in some ways because he did bring a business mindset to in an era of freedom, and he brought a little rigor that I think some people resented. But I think as I read his story, I genuinely believe that Bill Graham was fundamentally devoted to the fan experience, and so he wanted bands to start on time. He wanted them to play encores, and he provided those apples. He provided for his New Year's shows. He provided breakfast in the morning. He really stood for. He was an advocate for the fans. So this is an homage I made based on a number of tickets that I've procured, and you could recognize many of the ticket designs. And then this is a photograph of Bill. I think it's actually him at the Fillmore East watching a band warm up. And so I just thought I would share that. Another form that these graphics took were the tickets at the venues themselves. And they're out there if you're interested.
Pretty cool.
So you've seen these I think these were considered postcards, but they amount to handbills. And I don't want to spend a lot of time. You can see that the Ferry Building, for those of you from the Bay Area, the Ferry Building is represented in the right handbill, and in the left one. The left one I think is noteworthy. It's really the back of these that I want to highlight, and Rob showed us the back of another one. But what's interesting about the left one, which means it's got its place in history, you'll see Chuck Berry played with Buddy Miles, and Buddy Miles was the drummer for the Band of Gypsies, which was Jimi Hendrix's second band after the Jimi Hendrix Experience. With the original two British musicians, he then moved on and worked with more R&B musicians in the second half of his career. And you'll notice the date here is September 24th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, and that's 1970. And you have to wonder how Buddy Miles felt about having committed to performing on September 24th, because on September 17th of 1970, Jimi Hendrix died. So there's a little bit of interesting history behind that postcard. But if you jump to the next slide, Chris, I only wanted to so they took advantage of these postcards to also highlight upcoming concerts. And for those of us that are baby boomers, look at what was happening in 1 month's time in the Bay Area. It's incredible. Eric Burden and War, Van Morrison, Captain Beefheart, Pink Floyd, Eric Clapton, James Taylor, Laura Nyro. It's just a stunning collection of talent in 1 month. And then in the other group, you've got Cold Blood, Boss Gag, Spirit. You've got the precursor to Bad Company, the band Free. Taj Mahal played. The Allman Brothers played 4 nights. And then you have the Byrds, Neil Young, Van Morrison. What an embarrassment of riches it was to be alive back at this in this era of rock and roll.
God, did we live in a wonderful area and get to experience this, and not just through the album, obviously, but through live music. And this is a great example of the opportunity we had to do this during that time, Matt. Thank you for it.
Of course.
And I love the hand-drawn calendars.
Hand-drawn calendars, right.
Those are pretty cool.
So backstage passes, these are out there. I won't spend a lot of time on them. These are all Grateful Dead backstage passes from different eras in that band's illustrious career. So another form that interesting graphics took back in the day. So this, can anyone guess what this is?
A blotter.
Yeah, it's blotter. This is blotter paper used for acid back in the day. This is a piece of art created by Stanley Mouse, who is one of the big 5 poster artists, was a creator of a number of the Grateful Dead, his album covers. And so this is a take on his Ice Cream Man, which you might recall from Europe 72, the compilation of live performances from the Grateful Dead's famous 1972 tour up of European cities. And so there's, if you know where you can find a lot of examples of these is at the Haight Street Art Center. They've got a tremendous collection of blotter paper art available there. So I thought I'd share a piece of that.
That's great. I like the 44 of 72 in the bottom left-hand corner. That's pretty cool.
When I'm guessing he made 72 copies of that because it's based on Europe 72.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a festival. Anyone guess which festival this is?
That's Altamont.
Altamont.
Yep, that's Altamont. And so if you go to the next slide, Chris, so this is the very famous Rolling Stone issue that told the story of Altamont. And so I was looking at this cover and I love that photograph. And I was looking at the cover and I noticed down in the corner, of course, they credited the photographer, Michael, I believe it's Maggia. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, who the heck was Michael Maggia? So I did a search for him. And lo and behold, I discovered he had a studio once upon a time up in Marin. and his website was very outdated, but it was still out there. So I dropped him an email just for shucks and grins. This is maybe 3 years ago, to see if he's out there. And lo and behold, he writes me back. And I said, Michael, I've always been a huge fan of this photograph. It blows my mind that you were at Altamont. I'm a big fan of rock and roll history. Is there any chance you'd let me buy you a cup of coffee? Not expecting him to say yes. He says yes. And so
wow.
I said, well, so my guess is you have a lot more photography from Altamont. He said, I'd be happy to bring a few pieces. So if you go to that previous slide, he gave me these 2 pieces that I'd never seen before. He doesn't have the rights, of course. The rights to the cover shot for Rolling Stone are owned by Rolling Stone, but he gave me these. We had a wonderful conversation. So I wanted to share that only because there's so many people that were part of this creative force back in the day, and a number of them are still around. I mean, they dwindle year by year, but you know, I think many of them don't mind being contacted, and they're willing to get on the phone or do a Zoom with you and share their story. So, Chris, you always say don't sit back, reach out, ask for a chat, and it's incredible how generous some of these artists can be around that.
Well, these are incredible photos. I have never seen crowd photos other than stage photos of Altamont, and you know, the Rolling Stone cover here, and I'm sure one of you can say this better than me, but January 21st, 1970. I mean, Altamont, in many ways was really considered sort of the end of the mystery and the wonderful proliferation of the counterculture and the music that emanated out of that period, and this sort of brought the decade to the close, brought that phase of rock and roll to the close, and very sad moment in that history.
Well, and one more thing I will say about it, and this is something Michael really made a point to share with me. He said, bear in mind, the vast majority of people at Altamont that day did not know that they were participating in a disaster. It was a music festival to them. If you're that far away from the stage and didn't see what was happening, a lot of them learned about it the next day, the tragedies.
Yeah, incredible.
Okay,
and lastly,
so this is quirky, but you know what? If you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound where rock and roll history is concerned. So that room in the middle there, that's the Fillmore West, and it's currently available as an events. It's an event center for hire. It's called SVN for South Van Ness, and it's currently available. That's the room that was once upon a time the Fillmore West. And so I was trying to generate interest in one more night of the Fillmore West, and seeing if we couldn't bring in a number of musical performers to resurrect the place for a night. And so I made an appointment. I went to SVN. They gave me a tour. I should also point out that I had been in touch with someone who knew a former employee of Bill Graham's, and so I invited this guy to come with us that day. So they brought us in, and the room was as such, but there was a lot of additional space that was once upon a time Bill Graham's office. It was in disarray. They were continuing to renovate it. And so what I'm standing in front of there is the room outside of Bill Graham's office. And that was the wallpaper. And I said to them, are you tearing this down? They said, yes. I said, do you care if I take a piece of this wallpaper? So I've got a little piece of the Fillmore West as a part of my memorabilia, that little patch of wallpaper.
that's terrific.
Yeah.
Just terrific. All right. Well, thank you, Matt.
You bet.
Michael.
Sir,
You ready to roll?
I am. You want to roll me or first? There we go. Okay. So the guys just did a fabulous job of putting together context, artistic context, experiential context. One of the themes that I wanted to emphasize, and this is kind of my journey through the artistic process and the influences of what we've been talking about, was accessibility. And Matt just made this point. Some of these folks are still out there. Back in the day, they were very accessible. They were friendly. They were welcoming. They gave we'll talk a little bit about that as we go forward. But this is kind of a chronology of my influences from that time. I'm trying to be an artist, trying to emulate the artists that I love. So what we've got here on the left is Stanley Mouse. And during his time in Detroit, Stanley was an airbrush artist and was known for his monster hot rods. And Stanley would airbrush these freehand on the t-shirts, which is almost inconceivable to do something like that, like a county fair or something. And so that's what he did. And then he came west. And so there's a through line from the monster to the iconic Grateful Dead poster that he and Alton Kelly did based on the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam illustration, and they added the roses. They highlighted the roses. So Stanley from Hot Rods in Detroit out to Stanley in San Francisco is one of the big five.
That's
Okay.
cool. That's cool.
Okay, so here, actually, we've moved a couple of times in the last year. So I went through all the stuff I hadn't seen for years. So this, some of the fellows had referenced this before. This is called the Joint Show. It was a show in San Francisco at the Moore Gallery. This was the invitation to it, and it featured the big five artists. So we're lucky enough to have been there. And again, to the accessibility point, got to talk to who became my artistic idol, Rick Griffin, ask him a few questions. The guys were standing shoulder to shoulder there in this little gallery. So chronologically, my buddy and I had a month before this been at Monterey and watched Jimmy Torch's guitar and just, being taken aback by the impossible event that was in front of us. And then a month later to come back home and go and see the Joint Show in person. So all of these things were happening in such rapid succession and just exploding with creativity. Okay, so what do we got next, Chris? So after Hillsdale High School in San Mateo, I went to UCSB. And I had been drawing for a number of years, starting with Stanley's monsters, and then moving through trying to duplicate and copy some of the work primarily that Rick did. One was Independence Day, a very famous poster that's very intricate. And Rick drew with an instrument called a rapidograph, which was a needle-pointed pen, and you would add ink to it. And that's where he was able to get most of his detail. If you look at the originals, they're all very detailed and fine-lined. Kind of a difficult pen to use because it would clog off. But anyway, that was the medium. And so when I went to Santa Barbara, I was a Buffalo Springfield fan, right, Chris?
That's right.
Okay, so I'm freshman year, and I see this guy walking around the university center, and he's got a black cowboy hat on and a fringed jacket. And I'm going, this is my kind of guy. Didn't know who he was. Turned out he was the coordinator for the concerts committee. And a couple of months after I'd seen him, he ran an ad in the student newspaper looking for graphic artists to work with the concert folks. So I entered the ad. His name was Roger Smith, and Roger and I met. And the first poster that we did together was the Albert Dorr poster on the left. Roger loved that painting, the self portrait. And so I just added in the lettering on the right. And you can see, we've been wandering through all of the guys' posters before, the absolute sublime images that they were. So these images that you're going to see, you can tell are hand done. They're done out of reverence and respect for these wonderful artists. And were kind of my attempt to reference that difference between amateur and professional. Okay, so we did the canned heat one, and then that was the spring of '69, and a couple of months later we did the Memorial Day ball poster, which has a little story to it, and I'll tell that a little bit later. But these are the two that kind of stood out from the early days of our UCSB experience and doing a lot of posters, actually over the years, a number of posters for Santa Barbara.
I just love the connection back to you, Mike, and UCSB and your journey to meet this person and resulting in these. They're fantastic.
So I've done kind of a couple of different eras of the work that we did at UCSB. This poster was kind of a middle era. Now this was You can see the photograph that I used was from Desperado, so it kind of dates the poster as to when that was done. We had the Eagles play in the gym prior to that, and I think it was 72 or 73. Everything was, again, so accessible. I mean, we were backstage at the gymnasium playing cards with the Eagles, and then going up on this little stage, we paid a $500. Glenn gets up in front and goes, "Hey, we're the Eagles from Los Angeles." I mean, it was like, you know, everybody was right there. So this was a hand-drawn one also, the Eagles one, except for the bottom part of it where it's obviously not hand-drawn. And then kind of the third phase of the work that we did together was in the Dave Mason style, which now all of this lettering is, I don't know if you all remember, but it was called Letra Set, and you'd buy sheets of letters. You remember that, Rob? And you'd get kind of a blunt instrument and you rub it and they would transfer. So these things took a long time to do. Yeah. But the point here is that it moved to a less hand-drawn style and more of this high resolution, high contrast work. So I probably did those through 1974 or so after leaving Santa Barbara. Okay. All right. So I just wanted to come back. Chris and I talked about this before, and he encouraged me to tell this little story.
Great story.
Accessibility again. There was a show that almost happened called The Wild West. Some of you may remember that they were going to do it, they didn't do it. And the Family Doghouse on Pine Street in the city, somehow I got word that they were looking for folks to contribute and went up there. That was the first time I met Victor Moscoso. John Cipollina standing over there saying, well, one of the things we could do for the Wild West is we could teach kids how to roll their own cigarettes. You know, I mean, it's over right there. The guys just and Victor was very supportive. It was great. So this one and this poster, a lot of fun to do. Very funky. You can see the print process as we had a little offset press. We had one color tray. So we loaded red into one side of the color tray, blue into the other. And as we got later in the run, it became purple in the middle because they would all get together. And so that's why each one of them is different from the run. In 1987, a book called The Art of Rock, which is the Bible of rock and roll posters, a big coffee table book came out. I got it for Christmas. I'm paging through it, and lo and behold, there's a half-page representation of this poster. Total surprise. Obviously, it was a pretty exciting discovery. Okay, so because it was in the book, it kind of legitimized it. And as you guys know, collectors collect from the book. It's the Bible, and it legitimizes again some of the work simply because it's included in the book. So the point about this is it's shown up in various times over the years. The little inset here is San Francisco Chronicle. One morning, I can get the paper, come in, front page, headline is that the Dead had given their archives to UC Santa Cruz. And that was the headline, and the illustration that went with the story, top of the fold, was this poster, and just totally out of the blue. So that kind of led me to contacting the Grateful Dead archive, sending them a poster, going down to Santa Cruz and meeting the archivist at the time, a wonderful young man who knows everything about the Grateful Dead. Unfortunately, he's no longer there. He's around, but he's no longer working there. Okay, so I sold a couple of the posters. I had about 20 of them for some reason. I had no idea where they got it. Sold a couple of them, financed a trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, bought a beautiful Gretsch guitar. Time goes on, don't hear much about it. Then we come to the Rock and Roll Poster Society, and they're a gang from the East Bay. They do a show every year, and they are dedicated to the preservation of the rock and roll poster genre and the process and the beautiful art that's come out of it. They have young artists, they have older artists. When I started going, 3 of the big 5 were still around. So Wes was there, and Stanley and Victor Moscoso. And again, they were just wonderful. I mean, you know, you just walk up and talk to them, and they'd share their stories. They'd share. It was really, it made it worthwhile. And then guys like Emmett, who we talked about before, the new artists, who are just unbelievably extraordinary. How they do their work, and a lot of their stuff is computer based and hand based. But okay, so the long story ending was. Met a dealer there. He loved the poster. He wanted one. I've sold him a poster with the stipulation: no eBay, no flip. Mike, it's okay. You know, I'm just want it for my collection. I'll give you $1,500 for it. Okay, Brad, that's great. Go to the last. No, not quite. Go to the last, most recent show, and my friend Brad, who I just mentioned, said, there's this guy. He's got your poster. You know, he wants you to sign it. You got to get over it. Okay, so I went over and met the fellow. He's about our age. And where he got this poster, guys, I have absolutely no idea. But he was so excited. Can you sign it? And I'll pay you to sign it. And I can't remember his name. It's Larry. Honestly, it's a thrill for me to do this. I would be happy to do it. 2 months later, it shows up in an auction, probably from the dealer who I met. And so this young man had probably taken the one that he sold, and I sold it without any restrictions. Of course, it's his property. And the action was great. I mean, he got $8,200 for it, which, so it's just fun. I mean, I can tell that story because I had nothing to do with it. It was just, you know, a transaction. But it's kind of the wrap up to the story of kind of my journey through all of this wonderful time, all these things that we've all talked about, the shared experiences that we've all probably had, and it's still alive today. I mean, it's just it's a wonderful thing. And Chris, thank you for allowing us all to. I mean, this conversation with this group of guys could go on for 3 days, honestly.
Well, you know, and as you said, it's still alive, Mike, and you're the designer of the group, and these are wonderful to see what you've done from your days at UC Santa Barbara. But guys, it didn't end. I was surprised over the weekend to get an email and an attachment from Mike, and this is what he put together and sent to me.
Oh, that's great.
So you guys will see that's a mashup of one of Rick's posters.
That's great.
I think it's Grateful Dead in Hawaii, I think. It may have been.
Isn't that cool? And I thank you for that, Mike. It means a lot regarding our friendship. And it's apropos to your comment that this is still alive. Great stuff.
Well, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go quickly,
every
guys. I'm going to go quickly, guys. Here's another example of the wonderful art back then. My big FM radio progressive rock station was down in Southern California, KMET. And this was put together by a guy by the name of Neon Park. How does that fit, the name, Neon Park, who did a lot of posters for a number of rock bands down there. I wanted to point this out. This is one of my favorite Neil Young albums, On the Beach. And this was designed by Joel Burton, his longtime collaborator. And the lettering, as you can see there, Mike, is with your favorite, Rick Griffin. But I was fortunate enough to pick this up, and this adorns my walls at home. It's actually a rare piece from that shoot of where Neil's actually facing the audience. So I thought that was pretty cool. Guys, here's another one from Mike that he did at ASU. If you look bottom left, you can actually see his initials, Mike Adelot there. And he gave that to me. Again, that's framed and up in my wall here. And I thank him for that. Jackson Browne is in my top 5. So that was pretty a cool addition to my collection. I want to end my little section here with a tribute to Jesse Colin Young, who we lost this last week, frontman for the Youngbloods. The Youngbloods were a band that Cindy and I we met. I took her to Playland at the Beach, the venue out there, when we were dating. I used as a pickup line first day of college when I met her. I said, This is an incredible album. If you buy this album, I'll triple your money back. We named our daughter Jessica after Jessica Colin Young. This particular artwork was done by Charles Heald. And in fact, Charles did this poster of the Youngbloods, which is in the Smithsonian American Art Museum, which I thought was pretty cool. But this album here has meant a lot, as has the Youngbloods, and I thought it was only fitting to recognize Jesse and the wonderful work that the Youngbloods, who adorned a number of the examples in your collection of poster art, the Youngbloods did, and just a sad day when he left us. So, guys, that is it. We made it through. I can't believe it. I'm going to get us all back on screen here if I can figure out how to do this, which I think I can. I think we're already back, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
I want to thank all of you for spending the time to answering the call to talk about this wonderful period of time. I know you're all busy and we had a few technical glitches in the beginning, but we got through it. So thank you all very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for
Thanks.
the opportunity.
Yeah, very cool.
Big fun. Big fun.
Real pleasure.
Okay, guys, our paths will cross very soon, but again, thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you. Thank you. It's all great. Real good.